The prison cell was cold and dark. Jake Morrison sat on the metal floor, with his hands locked in glowing blue chains. The chains hummed with energy and felt warm against his skin. He had been here for 3 days now, ever since the tall lizard aliens captured his small ship near the edge of known space. Jake was not afraid. He had been in worse situations before. Back on Earth, he had fought in wars where he was outnumbered and outgunned. He had learned that sometimes looking weak was the best weapon a soldier could have. The aliens who captured him thought humans were nothing special. They thought Earth people were soft and helpless. That was exactly what Jake wanted them to think. The door to his cell opened with a hiss. A tall alien walked in. His skin was covered in green and gold scales that reflected the dim light. His yellow eyes looked at Jake like he was studying an interesting bug. 2 guards followed behind him, carrying weapons that crackled with purple energy. The tall alien spoke, and a small device on Jake's collar translated his words into English. "I am Commander Zroth of the Valthene Empire. You are the first human we have taken alive. Your ship was primitive. Your weapons were toys. Tell me, how did your weak species even manage to leave your little planet?" Jake stayed quiet. He had learned long ago that silence often told you more about your enemy than talking ever could. He watched Zroth's face, looking for any sign of emotion. The alien seemed annoyed by the silence. Good. Annoyed people made mistakes. Zroth stepped closer. You will answer my questions eventually. All prisoners do. We have broken stronger species than yours. The Valthene Empire has conquered 47 different alien races. Your Earth will be number 48. Jake finally spoke, keeping his voice calm and even. You seem very sure of yourself. I have reason to be sure, Zroth replied. Look at you. No armor on your skin. No claws or fangs. No special powers. Humans are fragile creatures. One of my soldiers could break you in half without effort. Maybe, Jake said with a small smile. But being strong is not the only way to win a fight. Zroth made a sound that the translator turned into laughter. Philosophy from a prisoner. How amusing. Perhaps you will be more useful as entertainment than as a source of information. He turned and walked toward the door. Think about your situation, human. You are alone, far from your home, locked in a cell on a ship surrounded by my fleet. You are helpless. The sooner you accept this, the easier things will be for you. The door closed, leaving Jake alone again in the darkness. But he was not really alone. The small device, hidden in his collar, was not just a translator. His people had modified it before his capture. Every word spoken near him was being recorded and sent back to Earth's ships. Every detail he saw, every guard rotation, every weakness in the alien security, all of it was valuable intelligence. Far away from the prison ship, Captain Vera Collins stood on the bridge of her vessel. The horizon's edge. She was a short woman with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her eyes were sharp and missed nothing. Right now, those eyes were focused on the communications officer at his station. Danny, do we have Morrison's location confirmed? She asked. Danny Price nodded without looking up from his screens. Yes, Captain. The signal is weak but steady. He is on a Valthene battlecruiser approximately 3 light-years from our current position. The ship appears to be alone, but we are detecting other Valthene vessels in nearby systems. Vera walked to the center of the bridge and pulled up a star map on the main display. Red dots marked enemy positions. Blue dots showed friendly forces. Get me a secure channel to Admiral Carter. We need authorization for what I am planning. Within an hour, the Admiral's face appeared on the screen. Helen Carter was an older woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen many battles. She listened carefully as Vera explained her plan. You want to use Morrison as bait? The Admiral asked. Not bait, ma'am. An intelligence asset. Jake is exactly where we need him to be. The Valthene think they have captured a helpless scout pilot. Endon. They have no idea they are holding one of our best tactical officers. Every second he spends on that ship, he is learning their weaknesses and sending us information." The Admiral was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "We will not lose him, ma'am. I promise you that." Back on the prison ship, Jake was counting. He counted the seconds between guard patrols. He counted the number of steps from his cell to the interrogation room. He counted the small cameras in the corners and the blind spots where they could not see. Everything was a piece of a puzzle, and Jake was very good at solving puzzles. The guards came for him again 6 hours later. They led him through corridors made of dark metal. He memorized every turn, every door, every detail. The ship was big, maybe 3 times the size of any Earth vessel he had seen. But big ships had big problems. More systems to maintain, more crew to coordinate, more places where things could go wrong. They brought him to a different room this time. It was larger and had screens showing star maps and ship movements. A younger alien stood waiting. His scales were brighter than Zroth's, more blue than green. "I am Sub-Commander Kreth," the alien said through the translator. "Commander Zroth thinks you are useless, but I believe you might teach us something interesting about your species. Sit." Jake sat in the chair they provided. It was too large for him, made for the bigger alien bodies. Another reminder that they did not see humans as equals. Kreeth pulled up images on a screen. "Tell me about Earth's defenses. How many ships do you have? What weapons? What colonies?" Jake told him lies mixed with small truths. He said Earth had 30 warships when they really had over 100. He described their weapons as simple missiles and lasers, leaving out the more advanced systems. He made human tactics sound predictable and boring. Kreth wrote everything down. Jake worked slowly and carefully over the next few days. The tiny component his people had smuggled to him was a miracle of human engineering. It was small enough to hide under his fingernail, but powerful enough to hack into alien computer systems. Every night after the guards finished their final rounds, he would remove it from its hiding place and get to work. The Valthene were confident in their technology. Their security systems were designed to stop external attacks from other ships or planets. They never considered that someone might attack from inside their own vessel. That overconfidence was their weakness, and Jake exploited it completely. He started small. First, he accessed the ship's basic systems through a maintenance panel in his cell. The panel was supposed to be locked, but the tiny tool cut through the simple electromagnetic seal in seconds. Inside, he found access to the ship's internal network. It was not the main computer, but it was a start. Jake did not try to steal secrets or plant viruses right away. That would trigger alarms. Instead, he did something much simpler. He watched. He monitored guard schedules and logged them. He tracked when shift changes happened. He noted which systems were checked regularly and which were ignored. Patience was a weapon, and Jake had learned to use it well. During the day, the interrogations continued. Sometimes it was Zroth, asking questions in his harsh, demanding voice. Sometimes it was Kreeth, who seemed genuinely curious about humans. Jake gave them both what they wanted to hear. He painted a picture of Earth as a weak planet, with limited resources and simple people who barely understood space travel. "Your capital city," Zroth demanded during one session. "Where is it located? What defenses protect it?" Jake described New York, but he made it sound like the only major city on Earth. He failed to mention the dozen other massive population centers, or the hidden military bases scattered across the planet. The Valthene wrote down every detail, building a false picture of human civilization. Kreeth was easier to manipulate. The young officer wanted to understand human culture and psychology. He said one day, "How do you coordinate in battle? How do you know what your fellow soldiers are thinking?" "We use radios and hand signals," Jake explained. "Simple stuff, nothing fancy like what you probably have." This was partially true. Humans did use radios, but Jake did not mention the advanced tactical networks, the encrypted quantum communications, or the AI-assisted coordination systems that gave human forces an edge in combat. Let them think Earth's military was primitive. Let them plan their invasion based on incomplete information, while Jake gathered intelligence and spread misinformation. Captain Collins was busy on the horizon's edge. The data flowing from Jake's modified translator was painting a detailed picture of Valthene capabilities. Her crew analyzed everything. State, the energy signature from their weapons is consistent, reported Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez from her station. They use plasma-based systems almost exclusively. That means their shields are calibrated to deflect energy weapons, but might be vulnerable to kinetic projectiles. Collins nodded, making notes. What about their ship formations? Very rigid, ma'am, said Danny Price. They follow standard patterns that seem to be empire-wide. Every battle group we have detected uses the same arrangement. 3 heavy cruisers in a triangle formation with smaller ships filling the gaps. Predictable, Collins muttered. That was good. Predictable enemies were easier to fight. She pulled up tactical simulations on her screen, running scenarios based on the Valthene's apparent doctrine. Again and again. The simulations showed that unconventional tactics could exploit their rigid formations. Her executive officer, Lieutenant Peter Hayes, approached with a concerned expression. Captain, the Admiral is asking for an update. She wants to know when we are moving to extract Morrison. Tell her we are not extracting him yet, Collins replied. Jake is doing exactly what he needs to do. Every day he spends on that ship makes us stronger and them weaker. We move when the intelligence gathering is complete, not before. Peter looked uncomfortable. Ma'am, with respect, Morrison has been a prisoner for over a week. The psychological toll. Jake Morrison has been through worse than this, Collins said firmly. I have read his file. He spent 3 months behind enemy lines during the Pacific Crisis. He once walked 40 miles through hostile territory with a broken leg. That man knows exactly what he is doing, and he knew the risks when he volunteered for this mission. What Peter did not know, what very few people knew, was that Jake's capture had not been an accident. It had been planned. Earth needed intelligence on the Valthene, and the best way to get it was from the inside. Jake had volunteered to let himself be captured, to play the helpless prisoner while actually serving as humanity's eyes and ears inside the enemy fleet. On the prison ship, Jake's nighttime work was paying off. He had mapped the entire vessel's layout through the computer system. He knew where the engines were, where the weapons were stored, where the command center was located. More importantly, he had found the auxiliary computer core, a backup system that the Valthene barely monitored. On his 10th night of captivity, Jake made his first major move. Using his hidden tool, he created a pathway from his cell to the auxiliary computer core. Then, he uploaded a simple program. It was not a virus or a weapon. It was something much more subtle. The program would introduce tiny errors into the ship's targeting systems. Nothing obvious. Just small miscalculations that would make their weapons slightly less accurate. A few centimeters off target here. A fraction of a second delay there. The Valthene would never notice until they tried to use those weapons in actual combat, and by then, it would be too late. Jake also planted monitoring software throughout the ship's network. Now, he could access internal communications, track crew movements, and even listen to command discussions. The modified translator on his collar sent all this information back to the horizon's edge, in short, encrypted bursts that looked like random static to Valthene sensors. Your people must be worried about you, Kreth said during an interrogation 3 days later. Do they even know you are alive? Probably not. Jake lied. I was just a scout pilot. Nobody important. They have probably already moved on. Assumed I was killed. Kreth seemed to accept this. That is unfortunate. Your species does not value individuals the way we do. In the Valthene Empire, every soldier matters. We would never abandon our own. Jake bit back a response. The irony was thick. The Valthene claimed to value their people, yet they had built an empire on conquest and subjugation. Meanwhile, Earth's forces were preparing a rescue operation that involved significant risk and resources, all for one captured officer. But pointing out that contradiction would not help, so Jake stayed quiet. The days blended together. Interrogations, time in the cell, careful nighttime work on the computer systems. Jake fell into a rhythm. He exercised to stay strong, using the limited space in his cell to do push-ups and stretches. He kept his mind sharp by memorizing details and running through tactical scenarios. The auxiliary computer core was located 3 decks below Jake's cell. He could not physically reach it, but he did not need to. The beauty of computer systems was that you could access them from anywhere if you knew the right pathways. Jake had spent 2 weeks learning those pathways, mapping every connection, finding every weakness. Tonight, he would use all that knowledge. His fingers moved quickly over the maintenance panel in his cell, the tiny tool interfacing with the ship's network. Lines of alien code scrolled across the small display, but Jake had learned to read it. Computer languages were universal in many ways. They all followed logic, patterns, rules. Once you understood the patterns, you could break them. The program he uploaded tonight was different from the others. This one would not cause immediate damage. Instead, it would wait. It would watch. And when the right moment came, when the Valthene tried to use their weapons in actual combat, it would strike. Their targeting systems would fail. Their shields would drop at critical moments. Their communications would experience mysterious delays. But Jake made sure it would look like random malfunctions, not sabotage. The Valthene would think their equipment was simply having technical problems. By the time they figured out the truth, the battle would be over. He finished uploading the final code sequence and carefully covered his tracks. The maintenance panel sealed shut, leaving no evidence of tampering. Jake lay down on the cold metal floor of his cell and allowed himself a small smile. Phase 1 of the operation was complete. Now he needed to execute Phase 2. The next morning, guards came for him earlier than usual. They pulled him roughly to his feet and marched him through the corridors. But this time, they did not take him to the interrogation room. Instead, they led him toward the center of the ship, to areas he had only seen through computer schematics. They stopped at a large door that opened into the main command center. Jake's eyes widened slightly as he took in the massive room. Dozens of Valthene officers worked at stations arranged in a circle around a central platform. Screens showed star maps, ship positions, and tactical data. This was the brain of the vessel, and Jake memorized every detail he could see. Commander Zrath stood on the central platform, his arms crossed as he watched Jake being brought in. "I wanted you to see this, human. I wanted you to understand the power you face." Zrath gestured to the screens. "This is just one ship. We have thousands like it. Our empire spans 200 star systems. We have conquered species far more advanced than yours. What chance does Earth have against such power?" Jake looked at the displays, his tactical mind automatically analyzing what he saw. The Valthene formation was indeed impressive. But he also noticed things Zrath probably did not intend to reveal. The ships were spread thin across too many systems. Their supply lines were stretched. Their communication protocols followed predictable patterns. Impressive did not always mean invincible. "I see a lot of ships," Jake said calmly. Zrath's eyes narrowed. "You speak as though you understand military strategy. But you are just a scout pilot. Correct? That is what you told us." Jake realized his mistake. He had let his training show through the act. Time to recover. "I read books," he said with a shrug. "Earth military history. I always found it interesting." "History," Zrath repeated. "Yes. Kreth mentioned you spoke of ancient battles. Primitive conflicts fought with swords and gunpowder. What relevance do those have to modern space warfare?" "Probably none," Jake admitted. "But the principles are the same. Attack where the enemy is weak, Defend where you are strong. Make your enemy fight on your terms, not theirs. Kreth entered the command center and approached the platform. He had been listening to the conversation. Commander, perhaps the human has a point. Their military history might offer insights into their tactical thinking. Their tactical thinking is irrelevant, Zrath snapped. We will crush them with superior force. End of discussion. He turned to the guards. Take him back to his cell. We jump to faster-than-light travel in 1 hour. I want him secured before then. As the guards led Jake away, he caught Kreth's eye. The younger officer looked thoughtful, almost concerned. Good. Plant seeds of doubt. Make them question their assumptions. That was part of the strategy, too. Back in his cell, Jake felt the ship's engines change pitch. They were preparing for the jump. Soon, they would be moving toward Valthene space, taking him farther from human territory. But that was fine. Everything was going according to plan. 3 light-years away, Captain Collins received the final data burst from Jake's translator. It contained detailed scans of the Valthene command center, including command codes, officer names, and tactical doctrines. But more importantly, it contained a single short message Jake had managed to encode in the transmission. Phase 1 complete. Beginning Phase 2. Execute rescue in 48 hours. Collins smiled. 48 hours. That gave them exactly enough time to get into position. She turned to her crew. All right, people. Listen up. We are about to pull off the most dangerous rescue operation in human history. Danny, send word to the fleet. I want every available ship ready to move. Amy, start working on those attack simulations using Morrison's latest intelligence. Peter, coordinate with engineering. I need our engines running at maximum efficiency. The bridge became a flurry of activity. Officers rushed to their stations. Screens lit up with tactical data. The horizon's edge began moving, accompanied by 3 other Earth vessels that had been waiting in nearby systems. They had been hidden, dark and quiet, for 2 weeks. Now, it was time to act. Lieutenant Karen Hughes approached Collins with a concerned expression. Captain, even with Morrison's intelligence, we are still badly outnumbered. The Valthene have at least 6 ships in that sector. We only have 4. Numbers do not tell the whole story, Collins replied. We have surprise. We have detailed knowledge of their systems. And we have something else they do not expect. What is that, ma'am? Collins looked at the star map showing the Valthene positions. We have a human inside their flagship who has been systematically sabotaging their combat effectiveness for 2 weeks. The hours crawled by. Slowly, Jake sat in his cell, appearing calm on the outside while his mind raced through possibilities and contingencies. Everything depended on timing. If Collins attacked too early, before all the Valthene reinforcements arrived, they would miss the chance to deal a decisive blow. If she attacked too late, the window of opportunity would close. But Jake trusted Vera Collins. She was one of the best tactical minds in the Earth fleet. She would get the timing right. On the 2nd day after the jump, Zrath visited again. The commander seemed agitated, which was unusual for the normally composed Valthene leader. We have detected some unusual readings from our sensor array, Zrath said, studying Jake carefully. Nothing we can identify clearly, but enough to make me suspicious. You would not know anything about that, would you? Jake kept his expression neutral. I have been locked in this cell for 2 weeks. How would I know anything about your sensors? Indeed, how would you? Zrath circled the cell slowly. And yet, I find it interesting that these anomalies began appearing around the same time we captured you. Technical staff insists they are just random glitches, but I am not so easily convinced. Sounds like you need better technical staff, Jake said with a slight smile. Zrath leaned close to the energy bars, keeping Jake confined. You are either very brave or very foolish. Human. I have not decided which. But know this. If I discover you have done anything to compromise this vessel, I will make sure your death is neither quick nor painless. Noted, Jake replied evenly. After Zrath left, Jake allowed himself a moment of concern. The commander was smarter than he had initially appeared. If the Valthene started a serious investigation into their computer systems, they might find the programs Jake had planted. That would be bad. Very bad. He needed the rescue fleet to arrive soon. 20 hours later, it did. The first sign was a tremor that ran through the ship's hull. Then, alarms began blaring throughout the vessel. Jake stood up in his cell, his heart pounding. This was it. The guards outside his door rushed away, responding to emergency orders. He was alone, for the first time since his capture. Working quickly, Jake used his hidden tool one last time. He accessed the door controls and overrode the energy barrier. The glowing blue wall flickered and died. He stepped out into the corridor, free for the first time in 17 days. On the bridge of the horizon's edge, Captain Collins watched the tactical display with intense focus. 4 Earth ships against 6 Valthene vessels. The numbers were bad, but numbers did not tell the whole story. All ships, execute pattern Delta 7, she ordered. Karen, launch the first wave of missiles. Danny, jam their communications on all frequencies. The Earth vessels moved in ways the Valthene had never seen before. Instead of forming a traditional battle line, they scattered in different directions, each one moving independently. The Valthene tried to coordinate their response, but their communications were being disrupted. The tight formations they relied on began to break apart as individual ships lost contact with each other. Target their flagship, Collins commanded. That is where Morrison is being held. I want precision strikes only. Disable their weapons and engines, but do not destroy the ship. Missiles streaked through space. The Valthene shields activated to deflect them. But something was wrong. The shield harmonics were off by just enough that some missiles got through. Explosions blossomed along the flagship's hull. Not enough to destroy it, but enough to damage critical systems. Inside the Valthene flagship, chaos reigned. Kreth stood at a tactical station, trying to make sense of the situation. How are they doing this? Our shields should be stopping those missiles. Unknown, sir. A technician shouted back. The shield generators are functioning normally, but the output is wrong. It is like the calibration is off. Zrath burst onto the bridge, his scales flushed dark with anger. Status report. 4 human vessels attacking from multiple vectors, Kreth reported. Our communication with the rest of the fleet is being jammed, and our defensive systems are not responding correctly. The human, Zrath snarled. He did this. Somehow, he sabotaged our systems. He turned to a guard. Get to the detention level. Kill the prisoner. Now. But Jake was no longer in the detention level. He was 3 decks up, moving through maintenance corridors toward the ship's main computer core. He had memorized the route during his weeks of digital exploration. Now he put that knowledge to use, avoiding main passages where crew members were rushing to battle stations. He reached the computer core and used his tool to bypass the security lock. Inside, massive processors hummed with activity. This was the brain of the ship, and Jake was about to give it a migraine. He plugged his tool directly into the main console and uploaded one final program. This one was not subtle at all. It would crash critical systems, overload power relays, and generally cause maximum chaos. As the program executed, lights began flickering throughout the ship. The Valthene crew started panicking as systems they relied on simply stopped working. Weapons went offline. Life support stuttered. Even gravity generators began having issues, causing crew members to stumble as the artificial gravity fluctuated. Jake disconnected his tool and made his way toward the nearest airlock. Collins would be sending a shuttle for him soon. He just needed to get to an extraction point. On the bridge, Zrath was screaming orders that nobody could follow because half the systems were down. Kreth stood frozen, watching their mighty warship fall apart around them. This was impossible. Humans Jake strapped himself into a seat on the rescue shuttle as it pulled away from the disabled Valthene flagship. Through the viewport, he could see the ongoing battle. Earth ships darted between the larger alien vessels like wolves harassing a herd of prey animals. Every time the Valthene tried to form up and coordinate, the human ships would scatter and attack from a new direction. The shuttle pilot, a young man named Greg Foster, glanced back at Jake with a grin. "Good to have you back, sir. The captain was worried about you." "The captain knows I can take care of myself," Jake replied, though he was smiling. It felt good to be among his own people again. "How is the battle going?" We are winning, sir. The Valthene are in complete disarray. Whatever you did to their systems worked perfectly. Half their ships cannot even fire their weapons properly." As they approached the horizon's edge, Jake watched a Valthene destroyer try to target one of the Earth cruisers. The alien ship's weapons charged up, then fired, but the shots went wide, missing by hundreds of meters. The targeting systems Jake had sabotaged were doing their job. The Valthene gunners were aiming correctly, but their computers were feeding them bad data. To them, it must have seemed like their equipment was possessed. The shuttle docked smoothly with the horizon's edge. The airlock opened, and Jake stepped through to find Captain Collins waiting for him. She looked tired, but satisfied. When she saw him, a genuine smile crossed her face. "Welcome back, Commander. You look terrible." Jake glanced down at his torn uniform and the bruises on his arms. "I have looked better. But the mission was a success. Did you receive all the data I transmitted? Every byte of it. Your intelligence has given us a complete picture of Valthene military capabilities. We know their ship designs, their tactics, their supply lines, and their command structure. You have done more for Earth's security in 3 weeks than most officers do in their entire careers." "Just doing my job, Captain." Collins led him toward the bridge. "Come on. You should be here for this." On the bridge, the tactical situation was reaching its conclusion. The Valthene had finally managed to restore some of their communications and were attempting to regroup, but it was too late. 3 of their 6 ships were severely damaged. The others were running low on ammunition and had crews on the edge of panic. Commander Zrath's face appeared on the main view screen. He looked defeated, his scales dull and his eyes showing something Jake had never seen there before. Fear, mixed with grudging respect. "Captain Collins," Zrath said through the translator, "you have made your point. Call off your attack, and we will withdraw from this system." Collins looked at Jake, who nodded slightly. She turned back to the screen. "We will cease fire under the following conditions. First, you will withdraw all Valthene forces from this sector immediately. Second, you will transmit a message to your high command. Tell them that Earth is not an easy target. Tell them that humans will defend themselves with everything they have. Tell them that if they want war with us, they will get a kind of war they have never experienced before." There was a long pause. Then Zrath nodded. "It will be done." The view screen went dark. Collins turned to her crew. "All ships, cease fire. Maintain defensive positions until the Valthene have withdrawn." Over the next hour, the battered Valthene fleet limped away from the battle zone and jumped to faster-than-light speed. The Earth ships held their positions, watching them go. When the last alien vessel disappeared, a cheer went up on the bridge of the horizon's edge. Jake did not cheer. He understood what this victory really meant. The Valthene would go back to their empire and report what had happened. They would tell the story of how a handful of human ships defeated a superior force. Some alien leaders would see that as a reason to avoid conflict with Earth. Others would see it as a challenge to be met with greater force next time. The galaxy had noticed Earth now, and that would bring both opportunities and dangers. 2 weeks later, Jake stood in Admiral Carter's office back on Earth. The Admiral sat behind her desk, reviewing his mission report on a datapad. Finally, she looked up. "This is remarkable work, Commander. The intelligence you gathered has changed everything. We now have leverage in negotiations with several alien species. Some are offering trade agreements. Others want to establish formal diplomatic relations. A few are even proposing military alliances against the Valthene. That is good news, ma'am, Jake said carefully. But we should be cautious. The galaxy is watching us now. Some will want to be our friends. Others will want to test us. We need to be ready for both. Admiral Carter nodded. Agreed. Which is why I am creating a new division. Tactical Intelligence and Operations. Its job will be to gather information on potential threats and develop strategies to counter them. I want you to lead it. Jake was surprised. Ma'am, I am just a field officer. I am not qualified to run an entire division. You are the most qualified person we have. You proved that you can think like the enemy, anticipate their moves, and exploit their weaknesses. Those are exactly the skills we need. The Admiral stood and walked to the window, looking out over the city below. Earth is entering a new age, Commander. We are no longer alone in the universe. Every decision we make from now on will have consequences that reach beyond our solar system. I need people who understand that. People who can see the bigger picture while still handling the details. That is you. Jake considered this for a moment, then nodded. I accept, ma'am. On one condition. What condition? I want to recruit my own team. People I trust. People who think differently and are not afraid to challenge assumptions. Done. You have full authority to bring in whoever you need. Admiral Carter returned to her desk and pulled up a star map, showing Earth's position relative to various alien territories. There is something else you should know. The Valthene have established what they are calling a buffer zone between our territories. Both sides are supposed to avoid it. A demilitarized zone, Jake observed. Exactly. It buys us time. Time to build more ships, train more crews, and establish better relations with other species. But it will not last forever. Eventually, someone will cross that line. When they do, we need to be ready. We will be, ma'am. I promise you that. Jake left the Admiral's office and took a transport to a cafe near the spaceport. Captain Collins was waiting for him there, along with Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez and a few other officers from the Horizon's Edge. They stood when he entered, and Collins pulled out a chair for him. 6 months after the battle, Jake Morrison sat in his new office at the Tactical Intelligence and Operations Headquarters. The room was simple but functional. One wall was dominated by a massive display showing a real-time map of known space. Red markers indicated Valthene territory. Blue markers showed Earth's expanding sphere of influence. Yellow markers represented neutral or unknown species. And scattered throughout were green markers indicating Earth's allies and trading partners. The list of green markers had grown significantly in recent months. Word of the battle had spread through diplomatic channels and trading networks across dozens of star systems. Species that had been conquered or intimidated by the Valthene saw Earth as proof that the Empire could be challenged. Some reached out to establish trade agreements. Others proposed information-sharing arrangements. A few even suggested military cooperation. But not everyone was friendly. Some species saw humans as dangerous upstarts who needed to be put in their place. Others were simply cautious, waiting to see if Earth's success was a fluke or the beginning of a new power in the galaxy. Jake's job was to track all of them, assess threats, and develop strategies to protect human interests. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he called. Captain Collins entered, followed by Amy Rodriguez and 2 new faces. A tall woman with short blonde hair and a compact man with dark eyes and a serious expression. "Commander, these are the last 2 recruits for the team," Collins said. "Lieutenant Sandra Price, Communications and Cyber Warfare Specialist, and Lieutenant Ben Murphy, Tactical Analysis and Strategic Planning." Jake stood and shook their hands. "Welcome aboard. I hope Vera explained what we do here?" Sandra nodded. "She said we are the people who make sure Earth never gets caught off guard again. That we study potential threats and figure out how to beat them before the fighting even starts. That is one way to put it," Jake agreed. The truth is, we are still figuring out exactly what this job is. 6 months ago, humanity's biggest concern was establishing colonies on nearby planets. Now we are dealing with interstellar politics, military alliances, and the constant threat of war with species that have been exploring space for thousands of years. We are making this up as we go along. Ben spoke up, his voice quiet but confident. That is what humans do best, though, right? Adapt to new situations. Find creative solutions. Win fights we are not supposed to win. Jake smiled. Exactly right. Come on. I will show you what we are working on. He led them to the main operations room, where several other analysts were working at computer stations. The large display on the wall showed detailed information about various alien species and their capabilities. Jake pointed to a section showing the Valthene Empire. We have been monitoring Valthene communications for months. They are still trying to figure out what happened to them. Their engineers cannot explain why their systems failed during the battle. They have torn apart the flagship looking for evidence of sabotage, but the programs I planted were designed to erase themselves after execution. As far as they can tell, it was just a series of unlucky technical failures. Do they suspect the truth? Sandra asked. Some of their officers do. Commander Zroth in particular. But he cannot prove anything. And his superiors do not want to believe that a human could infiltrate and compromise their systems so thoroughly. It challenges their entire worldview. Jake moved the display to show a different region of space. But the Valthene are not our only concern. This is the Korthan Federation. 36 star systems governed by a species of insectoid aliens. They have been watching our conflict with the Valthene very carefully. Amy brought up additional data on the Korthan. Their technology is roughly equivalent to the Valthene. Maybe slightly less advanced in weapons, but more sophisticated in computer systems and automation. They use drone ships extensively, controlled by AI programs. Have they made contact with us? Ben asked. Not officially, Jake replied. But we have intercepted some of their scout ships observing our territory. They are gathering intelligence on us, same as we are doing with them. The question is, what are their intentions? Are they potential allies? Or are they waiting for the right moment to strike? 2. Collins pulled up a file on her datapad. We have a mission planned to find out. One of our deep space monitoring stations detected a Korthan scout ship that suffered some kind of malfunction. It is drifting in neutral space, life support failing. We are going to rescue them. Rescue them? Sandra looked surprised. Why would we do that? Because it is an opportunity, Jake explained. If we save their lives, we establish goodwill. We show the Korthan that humans can be trusted, and we get a chance to interact with them directly, learn about their culture and their goals, information gathering, and diplomacy in one mission. Ben nodded slowly. Smart, but risky. What if it is a trap? It might be, Jake admitted. That is why we are going in with eyes wide open. The Horizon's Edge will lead the rescue mission, supported by 2 other vessels. Collins will be in command. I will be going along as an observer and liaison. Over the next week, preparations were made. The rescue fleet departed Earth and made the 3-day journey to the location of the drifting Korthan vessel. As they approached, sensors confirmed that the ship was indeed in distress. Its engines were dead, and its power systems were failing. Jake stood on the bridge of the Horizon's Edge, watching the alien ship grow larger on the view screen. It was an unusual design. All smooth curves and organic-looking surfaces. Nothing like the angular, aggressive styling of Valthene warships. Life signs? Collins asked. Detecting 3 Korthan aboard, Danny reported. Their biosigns are weak but stable. They are in some kind of hibernation state, probably to conserve oxygen. All right. Prepare a boarding team. Full environmental suits. We do not know what kind of atmosphere they breathe, or what pathogens they might carry. Take no chances. Jake suited up, along with a squad of Marines and a medical team. They used a docking tube to connect to the Korthan ship and carefully made their way inside. The interior was dark and cold, the backup power barely maintaining minimal life support. The design was strange to human eyes, with corridors that curved in unexpected ways and controls that seemed designed for creatures with more than 2 hands. They found the Korthan crew in what appeared to be the ship's command center. They were indeed insectoid, with hard exoskeletons and multiple limbs. Each one was about 5 feet tall and appeared to be in some kind of suspended animation. The medical team immediately went to work, stabilizing them and preparing them for transport. As Jake examined the ship's systems, he noticed something interesting. The malfunction had not been caused by a mechanical failure. Someone had deliberately sabotaged the vessel. Small, explosive charges had been planted in critical systems and detonated remotely. This was not an accident. It was an assassination attempt. "Collins, we have a problem," Jake said over the radio. "This ship was sabotaged. Someone wanted these Korthan dead." There was a brief pause before Collins responded. "Understood. Expedite the rescue and get back to the ship. We may have hostiles in the area." The team worked quickly, carefully moving the unconscious Korthan to the docking tube and across to the horizon's edge. The medical bay was ready for them, with quarantine protocols in place. As soon as everyone was safely aboard, Collins ordered the fleet to move to a safe distance. 2 hours later, one of the Korthan began to wake. Through a combination of sign language and computer translation, they established basic communication. The Korthan's name was something humans could not pronounce, but he agreed to be called Click for simplicity. Click explained that he and his companions were diplomats, sent to make contact with humanity. But someone within the Korthan government opposed this outreach. They had sabotaged the ship, hoping to prevent any alliance between their species and Earth. The assassination attempt had failed only because the charges had not been powerful enough to destroy the ship completely. Jake listened carefully to this explanation, his tactical mind already analyzing the implications. "So there is a faction within your government that sees humans as a threat?" Click made a gesture that the computer translated as agreement. "Yes. They fear what happened to the Valthene will happen to all the established powers, that you humans will disrupt the balance that has existed for centuries. They want to eliminate you before you become too strong." "And what do you think?" Jake asked. "Are we a threat?" Click looked at him with multifaceted eyes that were difficult to read. "I think you are something the galaxy has not seen in a very long time. A species that refuses to accept its limitations, that sees obstacles as challenges to overcome rather than barriers to avoid. Whether that makes you a threat or an ally depends on how you choose to use that quality." The conversation continued for hours. Click and his companions shared information about Korthan society, their technology, and their political structure. In return, Jake told them about Earth, carefully selecting what to reveal and what to keep private. Trust had to be built slowly, especially when dealing with species that had agendas of their own. When the meeting concluded, Jake returned to the bridge to find Collins reviewing sensor data. "We have got company," she said without looking up. 3 ships just dropped out of faster-than-light travel, about 2 million kilometers away. They are Korthan designs. When they're looking away, they are Korthan designs. Are they hostile? Unknown. They are not approaching, but they are not leaving either, just watching. Jake thought about this. The timing was suspicious. The rescue had happened only a few hours ago, and already Korthan ships were appearing. Either they had been following the diplomatic mission, or they had some other way of tracking it. Neither option was particularly reassuring. "Open a channel to Click. I want to know if those are his people or the ones who tried to kill him." A few minutes later, Click appeared on the bridge, moving carefully in the Earth standard gravity. He looked at the tactical display showing the 3 Korthan ships and made a sound that the translator rendered as distress. "Those ships belong to the military faction. The ones who sabotaged our vessel. They must have followed us, waiting to confirm our deaths. When they detected your rescue operation, They came to investigate. Collins turned to Jake. Recommendations? Jake studied the tactical situation. 3 enemy ships against Earth's 3 vessels. The numbers were even. But the Korthan had the advantage of knowing their own technology and tactics. Earth's forces would be going in partially blind. On the other hand, they had proven they could win against superior forces before. But did they need to fight at all? That was the real question. Hail them, Jake said. Let me talk to them. Collins raised an eyebrow but nodded. Danny, open a channel. The main view screen flickered to life, showing a Korthan commander in what appeared to be military armor. His exoskeleton was darker than Click's, and his posture radiated aggression. I am Commander Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Fleet, Jake said calmly. You are monitoring 3 Korthan nationals who are currently under our protection. They have requested asylum and assistance. We are prepared to defend them, if necessary. The Korthan commander made a harsh clicking sound. Those traitors sought to betray our people by allying with you. They deserve execution for their crimes. Surrender them immediately, or we will take them by force. I do not think you will, Jake replied. His voice was still calm, but there was steel underneath. You have 3 ships. We have 3 ships. You probably have superior firepower and more advanced shields, but you have also heard what happened when the Valthene underestimated us. Are you willing to risk the same fate over 3 prisoners? There was a long pause. The Korthan commander was clearly weighing his options. Finally, he spoke again. You cannot protect them forever, human. Eventually, they will have to leave your territory. When they do, we will be waiting. Maybe, Jake acknowledged. But a lot can change in the time between now and then. Alliances can form. Power balances can shift. Wars can start or end. You might find that executing these 3 creates more problems than it solves. Another pause, longer this time. Then, the Korthan ships began moving, slowly backing away from the Earth fleet. They did not leave the system entirely, but they withdrew to a safe distance, clearly choosing to observe rather than engage. Collins let out a breath she had been holding. Nice work. You just talked us out of a fight we might not have won. Or, I just delayed it, Jake said quietly. Those ships are not leaving. They are waiting for an opportunity. We need to get Click and his people to safety, and we need to do it in a way that does not start a war. The solution came from an unexpected source. Click approached Jake a few hours later with a proposal. Take us to Earth. Let us formally request political asylum. If we become official residents of your planet, the military faction cannot touch us without committing an act of war against humanity. They will not risk that, especially when the Valthene are already watching for signs of weakness. Grode. 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 Are you sure you want to do this? Jake asked. You will be giving up your home, your world, everything you know. Click made a gesture that might have been a shrug. We already gave that up when we decided to reach out to you. Our faction believes the old ways of doing things, the old alliances and power structures, are failing. We believe the galaxy needs new ideas, new perspectives. You, humans, represent that. We want to be part of it, and so it was decided. The Earth fleet made the journey back home with 3 Korthan diplomats, who would become the first non-human residents of Earth. The Korthan military ships followed at a distance, but did not interfere. When the Earth vessels crossed into human-controlled space, the pursuit ships finally turned back. Click and his companions were given quarters at a diplomatic facility near the United Nations headquarters. They spent weeks in meetings with Earth's leaders, sharing information and discussing the possibility of a formal alliance between their species. It was slow work, complicated by language barriers and cultural differences. But progress was made. 3 months after the rescue, an official treaty was signed. The Korthan Federation and the Earth Alliance, as humanity's government had recently renamed itself, agreed to mutual defense and technology sharing. It was Earth's first major interstellar alliance, and it changed everything. Other species saw that humans could be trusted partners, not just dangerous wildcards. More diplomatic contacts followed. More treaties were negotiated. Earth's sphere of influence continued to grow, but Jake knew that success brought its own dangers. Every alliance made Earth more visible, more important on the galactic stage. And the more important they became, the more enemies they would make. The Valthene had not forgotten their humiliation. Other species saw Earth's rise as a threat to their own power. The peace was fragile and could shatter at any moment. That was why his work was so important. Why the Tactical Intelligence and Operations Division needed to always be vigilant, always planning, always ready. Because the next threat could come from anywhere, at any time. And when it did, Earth needed to be prepared. Jake stood in his office late one night, looking at the star map on his wall. So much had changed in such a short time. A year ago, humanity had been alone in the universe, barely beginning to explore beyond their own solar system. Now, they had allies, enemies, and a growing reputation as a force to be reckoned with. The galaxy had underestimated them once. Some species were still making that mistake. But slowly, the message was spreading. Humans were not helpless. They were not weak. They were survivors who had learned to thrive in the harshest conditions. They were tacticians who could turn disadvantages into victories. They were a species that refused to give up, no matter the odds. And the galaxy was learning, one encounter at a time, that underestimating humanity was a very dangerous mistake to make. The future was uncertain. More challenges would come, but Jake Morrison and the people he worked with would face those challenges the same way they had faced all the others. With intelligence, creativity, courage, and the absolute refusal to accept defeat, because that was what humans did, and the galaxy was just beginning to understand what that truly meant. So, she said as he sat down, rumor is, you are getting your own command. A whole division, no less. Rumors travel fast, Jake replied with a smile. And yes, it is true. I am going to need good people. People who are not afraid to take risks and think outside the box. Interested? Collins laughed. Are you kidding? After what we just pulled off? Count me in. This is going to be interesting. Amy raised her glass. To the future. Whatever it brings. They all raised their glasses and drank. Jake looked around the table at these people who had risked everything to rescue him. They were more than colleagues. They were family. And together, they would make sure that Earth was ready for whatever came next. Outside the cafe, the stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere among those stars, the Valthene were licking their wounds and reassessing their assumptions about humans. Other alien species were watching and wondering what this new player on the galactic stage would do next. The future was uncertain, full of challenges and dangers, but it was also full of possibilities, and humanity, as always, would face it head-on with courage, creativity, and determination. They had been underestimated before. They had proven their doubters wrong before, and they would do it again, as many times as necessary. Because that was what humans did. They survived, they adapted, and they never gave up. Were supposed to be weak. They were supposed to be easy prey. How had everything gone so wrong? The answer was simple. Though Kreth would not fully understand it for years, the Valthene had underestimated their enemy. They had judged humans by their physical appearance and their brief time in space. They had not considered that a species which had survived countless wars on their own planet might have learned a thing or two about conflict. They had not realized that being weaker sometimes forced you to be smarter. A human shuttle appeared on the sensors, approaching one of the flagship's airlocks. The Valthene tried to fire on it, but their weapons were still offline. They tried to launch fighters, but the hangar bay doors would not open. They tried to call for help from their other ships, but communications were still being jammed. All they could do was watch as the shuttle docked, picked up its passenger, and departed. Jake Morrison was going home. Attack. Their weapons will not fire correctly. Their shields will fail. Their communications will be unreliable. They will think they are suffering from technical malfunctions, but really, they will be fighting blind. She paused, then added, and most importantly, we have motivation. They took one of our people. We are bringing him home, no matter what it costs. The Valthene think they are dealing with a weak, frightened species. They are about to learn how wrong they are. The 4 Earth ships moved through space in complete silence. They used minimal power to avoid detection, drifting like debris through the void. It would take them 36 hours to reach the intercept point. Once there, they would have one chance to execute the plan perfectly. On the Valthene ship, Jake felt the vessel jump to faster-than-light speed. The sensation was strange, like falling and flying at the same time. He knew that Collins and the rescue fleet were coming. He knew that in less than 2 days, this ship would be a battlefield. And he knew that his role was not over yet. The most dangerous part was still ahead. On day 15, something changed. Zroth came to his cell personally, which was unusual. The commander's yellow eyes studied Jake with an expression that was hard to read. We have learned much from you, human. Perhaps too much. I am beginning to think you are more clever than you appear. Jake's heart rate increased slightly, but he kept his face neutral. I do not know what you mean. I have answered all your questions honestly. Perhaps you have been feeding us carefully selected lies. Zroth leaned closer. It does not matter. Tomorrow we begin our journey to the Valthene homeworlds. You will be presented to the High Council as proof of our discovery of your species. After that, the invasion of Earth will be authorized. The door closed, leaving Jake alone with that information. Tomorrow, they would move. That meant his time on this ship was running out. He needed to complete his mission tonight. As soon as the last guard patrol passed, Jake went to work. He had one more gift to plant in the Valthene computer systems. This one would be his masterpiece, viving every word. Your honesty is appreciated, Kreeth said when they finished. Perhaps you are smarter than Zroth believes. A smart prisoner lives longer than a stubborn one. I just want to survive, Jake said, playing the part of a frightened captive. Inside, he was smiling. Every lie he told, every false detail, would make the Valthene overconfident, and overconfident enemies made fatal mistakes. As the guards took him back to his cell, Jake noticed something. A cleaning drone was working in the corridor. It was small and moved on multiple legs, scrubbing the floors, but as it passed near him, it dropped something tiny on the ground. Jake's foot covered it smoothly. The guards noticed nothing. Later, alone in his cell, Jake picked up the small object. It was a component, smaller than his fingernail. He recognized it immediately. His people had sent it. Now he could do more than just listen and watch. Now he could start to act. The Valthene thought they had captured a helpless human. They thought Jake Morrison was their prisoner, weak and alone. They had no idea that the real trap was just beginning, and they had no idea that they were the ones caught in it.